Chairman of Reform UK, Zia Yusuf. Zia, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Well, what a day for you. There are obviously a lot of issues to talk about, but Reform UK are now officially the most popular party in the country, overtaking not only the Tories, but also Labour now. This poll came out today. So congratulations. Your thoughts?
Well, thank you, but the credit and the thanks are due to the hundreds of thousands of members we have across the country and the millions of patriotic British people who support Reform. And the reason this is happening is because what Reform are doing, what Nigel Farage and our MPs are doing, is giving the British people hope at, frankly, an extraordinarily dark time. And so we're very proud of that. One of the things we saw, I was out in the United States over the inauguration weekend for President Donald Trump, and I can tell you that the spirit of boldness, of confidence, was something to behold. It really felt like, once again, the United States is walking tall. We're all inspired by that. You look at this whirlwind, this shock and awe campaign of executive orders that he has initiated since coming to power. What a remarkable thing it is to see a politician, a candidate, make bold promises and then deliver on them so quickly. That is exactly what the British people can expect and will get when Prime Minister Farage arrives at number 10 Downing Street, flanked by 350 to 400 Reform members of Parliament who are courageous and are in no uncertain terms as to why they got elected.
Well, what I would say is that, of course, you're quite right. I mean, Donald Trump does optimism brilliantly. I mean, the reason that America is booming, the reason that investment is already pouring in and their economy is soaring is in no small part due to his rhetoric, talking up his country, saying America is great, make America great again, America will be great again, the American dream is back. Meanwhile, we have a government who came into power on July the 5th and ever since have been talking us down, talking this country down. In what way did Keir Starmer and his motley cabinet crew think that doom, gloom and pessimism was going to work for the people of Britain? It's no wonder they're falling down the charts.
Well, look, I understand what you're saying. This is a disastrous, frankly, dystopian Keir Starmer government full of a bunch of, his cabinet are a bunch of over-promoted student politicians who have no business running anything, let alone a great country like this. But look, whether it's 0.1% growth or 0.1% negative, doesn't really matter. This country has not been growing now for a number of years. Real wages for British people, that is wages, the take-home pay net of not just taxes but of inflation, has been trending down for almost 15 years in this country. That's why your listeners and your viewers feel poorer. It's because you actually are getting poorer. And the people who are actually responsible for that are the Tory party, who took the tax burden to the highest level that it has been since World War II, exploded the size of the population by about 6.5 million people during their 14 years in office. That's a net growth in population number. Failed to build anything like enough infrastructure, not enough hospitals, so you can't get to see A&E in the case of tens of thousands of people in a sensible time frame. Not enough prisons, which is why we have so many violent criminals still terrorising British people. So look, whether it's Labour or the Tories, these are a bunch of weak-kneed, supine, cowardly people who have no business, frankly, representing the British people. And now with Reform and under Nigel Farage's leadership, we have real hope for patriotic, highly competent leadership.
Just to provide the details to the audience, this poll was done by an organisation called Find Out Now, a pollster company, and the figures are now Labour are on 22%, and until recently, until this poll, they were incredibly, in my view, still just about top of the charts, still the most popular party in the country. They've now fallen to third place on 22%. The Tories have gone above them on 23%. Not sure I can work out why that has happened. But you guys at Reform are top on 26%. And can I say, Zia, that my take on it is that you guys and Nigel Farage, Richard Tice and your small number of MPs for some reason seem to manage to make so much more noise than any other party, but particularly the Tories. The Tories are supposed to be the opposition. What did we hear from Kemi Badenoch this week? On this week of all weeks, so much going on in so many ways. She says it would be very sad. She's very sad about academy schools, that taking away their independence will be a tragedy. I kind of tend to agree with that, but is that the best she could do this week? And can I bring you now to the issue of the day now, which again I think Reform UK have grasped the nettle here and caught the mood of the public. We're talking, of course, about the Southport horror, the horror on the dance floor, the awful little person, Axel Rudakabana. Now, my view on it, I've never had strong feelings about the death penalty, but I look at the faces of those three little girls whose lives were snuffed out in the most horrific way. And I think, well, surely in exceptional circumstances, the British justice system, the British state should have the option of execution. Rupert Lowe said this, Richard Tice has said this. Can you articulate the feelings of your party and what your party's policy would be on this?
Well, I want to be really clear about something. I am concerned that this discussion, as important as it is, and obviously the transcripts and learning in detail the horrific aspects of this case, it broke my heart, as I'm sure it did for your viewers. But let's be really clear about something. It is the job of the government to keep people like those lovely little girls safe. And there were people who are being paid by the taxpayer, for example, the people involved in the PREVENT programme, who catastrophically and devastatingly failed in their duty, not just to do their jobs, but their moral duty to keep those people safe. He was reported to PREVENT multiple times. Likewise, the Crown prosecutor. How on earth somebody who possessed enough ricin to kill thousands of people was never charged with terrorism? The fact that our government withheld and covered up so much information about this case. I mean, there are plenty of parallels throughout British history where the British public learnt lots of details about the killer, but it was a different sort of profile. It was different immutable characteristics. It didn't fit the narrative. These are all really important questions. It's why Nigel Farage, our leader, has called for the resignation of the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. It is evident that we have two-tier policing in this country. We have two-tier justice systems. We have a PREVENT service that has frankly failed catastrophically. This killer should never have been allowed to carry out these murders, and we must not let off the hook the people whose duty it was to protect those little girls.
And what about Nigel Farage here at the time, that summer of discontent after these horrific killings when riots broke out all over the country, particularly in Southport? He suggested, he said that, that there was information available that made it fairly clear that something was not right here, that there may be terrorism involved, that perhaps it was a migrant and that the government were covering up. He was slapped down as some sort of rabble-rouser dealing in misinformation, particularly by the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, who said that any suggestion of terrorism was fake news. Now, Nigel has written to Angela Rayner demanding an apology, but he is owed an apology by Keir Starmer as well. The only real misinformation that was being spread at that time was by Keir Starmer and his cabinet cronies, who told us all, how dare you gossip and speculate about terrorism? There is no terrorism here. Well, guess what? There was. I mean, this cover-up that he's trying to get around now was scandalous. It's a scandal. He lied to the British people.
I'm glad you used that word. I was about to very respectfully correct you on the word misinformation. This is not misinformation. It was premeditated, deliberate lies. The idea that the Prime Minister of this country would not have known about the ricin, the idea that the Prime Minister of this country, and actually obviously the Deputy Prime Minister, would have not known about the fact that he had downloaded Al-Qaeda materials. He would have been aware of these things. So they deliberately lied. And as someone who works with Nigel Farage, I'll tell you, it was a very challenging time, because if you remember, there was the mother of all smear campaigns. You remember the whole hashtag Farage riots thing that was going on. Frankly, very dangerous rhetoric, the notion that our leader, Nigel, in any way provoked any of that stuff. The reality is what caused so much anger to boil over was this sense that something was being covered up. That has now transpired to be obviously true. And what Nigel Farage did, he was the only political leader in this country brave enough to simply ask the correct and valid questions. For example, is information being withheld from us? Clearly, a very significant amount of vital information was withheld from us, and the government's own anti-terrorism czar, if you remember, just a few weeks later, said that that was correct and that withholding information from the British public is an awful thing to do because you leave a vacuum that then gets filled by potentially actual misinformation. So none of this is appropriate at all. Angela Rayner absolutely should apologise to Nigel Farage. Keir Starmer should apologise. I mean, frankly, let's be real, this is a resignation matter. At some point, we hope to be able to hold Keir Starmer truly to account for his devastating and appalling actions.
Yeah, I didn't say that lightly. I don't say that lightly, but the Prime Minister lied to the people of this country. He may have had his reasons. He wanted to quell those riots, but he still lied to us. So can I just finish, Zia, if I can, with a few potential policies for the Reform UK party in terms of Southport, developments that have kind of unfolded since yesterday. Would the Reform UK party be in favour of a return to the death penalty, as I say, in very exceptional circumstances? Would the Reform UK party agree with a great many of our viewers and listeners that people like Axel Rudikabana should no longer have the option not to face their sentencing and not to have to listen to the victims' statements, and if they refuse, the state should show its might and force them into the dock, if necessary, in a straitjacket, gagged. But you listen to this, you take your punishment. And finally, would Reform UK support a change in this blanket rule about people under 18 not being able to get a full life sentence, a whole life sentence? What I thought about that, what I think is strange about the fact that the judge, who I think under the circumstances did the best job that he could, he was clearly frustrated that he couldn't impose an even more severe punishment than 52 years. But what I found strange was back when he was first arrested, there were a few days when we weren't told his identification, his name, because he was under 18. And the law of this land is we don't reveal the name of suspects if they're under 18. And then a judge said, well, you know what? This is such an exceptional circumstance, and he's very near his 18th birthday. You can name him. So they changed the rules then. Why couldn't they change the rules for the sentence as well? Make exceptions, as I say. Shouldn't judges be able to make exceptions in exceptional cases? You'll get a crime like this once in a lifetime, and I feel to an extent the state didn't have the apparatus to deal with it severely enough.
Yeah, well, look, I have a great deal of sympathy for all of those sentiments that you expect, that you just articulated. Look, Reform UK is a serious political party. We're now polling at #1 in this country, and we expect to be the next party of government of the United Kingdom. So I'm not going to make up policy on the Hoof Live on your show, as much as I love your show. But I will say this, once again, I want to reiterate, as shocking as having to witness everything you just described was, we should be ensuring that such things never, ever get to happen again.
Yeah.
This man is a psychopath. He actually said he was glad that these little girls died. It was why this stuff was so shocking. I go back to the point that there are people in the Prevent program who knew about these issues. The father knew about these issues, and nothing was done about it. He was allowed, frankly, to go and commit this murder. And then there's some narrative warfare about it being about Amazon and, you know, purchasing knives or something like that.
What a lot of nonsense that was.
It's absolute nonsense. So I want to reiterate the point that we have an intelligence service, we have the Prevent program that has been totally unfit for purpose for a very long time. And look, this has real life consequences. It has tragic consequences. people lose their lives as a result. I mean, do you remember? I'm sure some of your listeners and viewers will remember the Manchester Arena bombing at the Ariana Grande concert, another tragic terrorist attack. And if you remember, there was a security guard who gave testimony and said that he saw the bomber walking into the arena, and he was about to go and stop them, but he didn't because he was worried that he would be called racist and classed racist. Right, so this is endemic in our society. We have two-tier policing, we have special treatment for certain groups, and that does nobody any favors, even if it is well intended, which maybe in some cases it is, maybe in some cases it isn't. No matter how it's intended, it has tragic consequences. And we go back to that point at Reform UK. We will ensure that we have an intelligence agency that does its job, is not afraid to do its job. Our police are not afraid to do their jobs, and that will save lives. Until Reform are in power, I'm afraid we're going to continue to get this sort of appalling malfeasance, I would say, in public office.
I fear you might be right, Zia. Zia, great pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your time.